So it is time. The Kerbal Space Program is real. So this is haven't made a video in a while, so I figured I might as well get back to it. And I was playing Kerbal Space Program, so I figured might as well be in Kerbal Space Program. So minor disclaimer: they updated the game, broke everything. So this is another new playthrough yet again. This is going to be my first orbital launch. And I am playing the hyper realistic mod, which has all kinds of just really fun things that I'm going to talk to you about on the way up. But basically, this rocket is a reasonably accurate representation of the Explorer 1 mission, which was the first time the United States put anything into orbit. I was considering doing Sputnik instead because Sputnik looks cooler in my opinion, but it's also about 50 times as heavy, and I don't have rockets big enough to put Sputnik up yet, so I'm going to put the Explorer up instead because it's significantly easier. And I was joking last time when I talked about how I thought it would be cool to put something into orbit basically using a V2 as the first stage and then a bunch of American Tiny Tims as the second stage. I was joking. I actually dug into what the Explorer 1 mission actually was, because when I just read over the glossary of the general design of the rocket, I thought they were fucking joking. They're not Tiny Tims, but that's basically what this fucking is. So this is using the later version of the Redstone rocket, but it's basically using a Redstone rocket, which is the American updated version of the engine that the V2 used. It's quite a bit more powerful. The V2 produces, I believe, 260 kilonewtons of thrust at sea level. This produces almost 350. So it's quite a bit more powerful. It also has a bit higher exhaust velocity, which means higher specific impulse, which means you get more acceleration for the same amount of fuel, or you get more thrust for the same amount of fuel, basically, which is better. And so we're going to see if it works. Holy shit, it's working. Is it working? It's not working. Does have a minor issue in that it's ignition probability. I'm using even more realistic mods than I was last time, so rockets now have ignition probabilities. They still have the only one ignition things. Most rockets still can only be ignited on the ground. You can't actually use this as an upper stage. It just wasn't designed for it. So this is going to take about 50 tries, but I believe that we can actually get it to launch. This up here is a refueling pump. So nope. We have confirmed not ignited. God fucking damn it. So I'm just gonna pretend that these resets here are me telling the guy, we're gonna call him Jimmy. It's the janitor. We're gonna go tell him to go out and reset the ignition thing. We're gonna pump some fuel back in, because you do dump quite a bit of fuel every time you attempt to ignite a rocket, but it's fine. That's why I have it up so high in the air, so that all the fuel goes away. Ignite. Ignite. There we go. Motherfucker. I'm gonna toggle our pump on, which is gonna refuel us as it's sitting here with the engine burning. And the reason I'm doing this is twofold. The reason you ignite the rocket engine before you release the clamps is because the rocket engine doesn't ignite instantly like it does in stock, so you will fall onto the pad if you attempt to do that. The other reason I do it is because you see how hard it is to get the damn thing to ignite now. But hey, it worked. We're going to be using our autopilot for the most part. And here we go. It's basically an updated, more powerful version of the V2. I'm sorry, I'm not the least sick I've ever been in my life, and we're using the V2 Strakes because I thought it would look better than the normal ones. Although we are using the later Redstone versions of the exhaust thrust ring, the graphite things. Also, my frame rate is not as impressive as it usually is. Not that it's very impressive usually, but this is going to take a little longer than usual. So some issues with this design. The actual design of the actual rocket is even more absurd. I might stick a picture in it. I might not. Just look up the Jupiter C rocket. It looks fucking ridiculous. It's the upper stage. It comes around. It comes to this beautiful smooth nose cone, and then there's this fucking giant blocky cylinder sitting on top of the nose cone, and then there's this tiny little penis sticking out at the top, and it's the most stupid looking machine. So we're starting our gravity turn pretty early. This thing does have a pretty good thrust to weight ratio. I think its thrust to weight ratio on this first stage peaks at 10 G's. So, oh geez, we're gonna have a lot of G's. Our combustion efficiency is lower than it usually is, and I think a piece of our rocket just fell off. Yep, we've lost a piece of the rocket. I'm not sure what, but we're still running. This is such a stupid thing. Oh my god. Part of our rocket fell off. Alright, now we're going to switch to sea level hold, which is going to keep us pointing in the right direction. We're also going to go in here, going to go to our flap settings, and we're going to turn the roll way the fuck down so we stop oscillating. Oscillating. English, you know. And we're also going to do it with the thrust vanes. Thrust vanes. I believe in you. I believe in me. I can do it. I can click on the thing. I did it. I clicked on the thing. And roll. 20 should be good. Yeah, there we go. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. You know, let's roll ourselves level 2 because I'm a fucking OCD bitch. Yeah. Now this is a rocket. Being all rockety and shit. But yeah, as I said, I actually have done a much better job getting the fairing on than the actual one. It hurts me. It hurts to look at, thinking of that big blocky thing breaking the sound barrier. Speaking of breaking the sound barrier, we've exceeded Mach 3. We also got quite a bit of altitude, just passing 30 kilometers, which is a nice decent altitude. Our ascent rate is over 1,000 meters per second. Just barely. I mean, we have just passed 1,100 meters per second ourselves, which is a lot of speed. In miles per hour, it's a number. It's around 3,000 miles per hour at this point, I believe. Or 4,000, I don't fucking know. I used to be really good at converting between miles per hour and meters per second. That was a long time ago. So we're still climbing at nearly 70. Oh, wow. Oh, God. You know when I said I was doing my gravity turn, I didn't do it steeply enough. So we're gonna kick this way the fuck over. You know what? We're gonna go to surface 0, and we're gonna burn towards the horizon. I fucked up. Yeah, I fucked up pretty badly. So we're gonna have a shitload of steering losses. Although we are almost out of fuel. We're also gonna blow the fairings because fuck them, beta bitches. So we are accelerating at 8 Gs now. It's a lot of Gs. A substantial sum of Gs. Yeah, this ascent, it was not optimum. I would love to shut my rocket engine down and save some fuel to burn at apoaps, but I can't because, you know, only one ignition. And it's only usable at the launch pad, and as you notice, it's pretty fucking difficult to get it to work. You also notice I have a little bit of ethanol left. Because I'm using a more realistic rocket model, the amount of oxidizer to fuel that it uses varies as it climbs and just kind of at random a little. So you do usually end up with a little bit of extra fuel. So we're now going to detach this upper stage. I'm going to activate my RCS, which is going to push me away. And we're going to shut that down. And we're going to go orbit. Point me in the right direction, please. And this is basically what the upper stage of the goddamn thing looked like, and it scares me a little how this just massive blocked cylinder it was just sitting on top of the rocket. Yeah, I'm using a bit tighter, a bit smaller one. I do have the RCS. This right here is my probe core. This is the computer that's controlling everything. It's pretty heavy because we're very old and we don't have digital computers yet, so everything's big, heavy analog shit. This is the Explorer one. This is the actual thing we're trying to put into orbit. It's fucking tiny and obscenely lightweight. I mean, it's like 2 feet long. It is small and very light, which is why we're actually, unlike Sputnik, which is fucking huge and heavy, we're actually going to be able to get it into orbit. I'm using a hydrazine because it's extremely efficient compared to everything else I have right now. It's also absurdly toxic. But hey, you know, whatever. Or also we're gonna burn some RCS fuel while we have it. I might as well be doing that as we coast to apoapsis. Apoapsis. Oh! That was noisy. Yay, we're in space, although we are not in orbit. We are in space, but we are suborbital as all's hell. This is the easy part. Getting into space is actually not that big of a challenge. There are model rockets, big model rockets, but there are model rockets that'll crack the, whatever it's called, line that's considered to be the beginning of space. The problem is orbital velocity. It's around 7 kilometers. It's almost 8. It's almost 8 kilometers per second. I'm going to be going about 2.5 kilometers per second by the time I reach my highest point. 2.5, it's a lot less than nearly 8. That is what this upper stage is for. It is 3, and this is when I was saying I thought it was a fucking joke the first time I read it. This, basically, this one engine we have right here, there are basically 11 of them arrayed around the inside of this cylinder, which is going to be the first stage. They're solid rocket motors, by the way. They're going to fire. They're going to give me an acceleration of around 20 Gs at peak for about 7 seconds. We then stage. The outer section of this cone drops off, taking the 11 outer ones with them. There are then 3 more of these guys stuck together in the center. They're going to fire and burn for about 5 seconds, giving me, again, a bit more than 20 Gs of acceleration. And then they're going to burn out. They're going to be jettisoned, and then this last one's going to push the Explorer into orbit, hopefully. Now, usually at this point, you have a very low thrust-to-weight ratio with a very efficient burning engine. This is the polar opposite of that. These are extremely inefficient, very high-thrust engines with an obscenely high fuel fraction. Because there's such a huge amount of fuel being used to push such a light probe into orbit, the amount of acceleration we're going to get from each stage is actually pretty massive. The first 2 stages together are going to give me 3 kilometers per second, and the top one, the last one's going to give me 2 kilometers per second of acceleration. That is, those are numbers. That's 3, 4, 5. That's going to give me about 5. Let's say about 5. Going to be a bit less than 5.5. Which means I don't think I'm actually going to make orbit. I think I screwed up my gravity turn so horribly. I don't actually think I'm going to make orbit this time. Wow, that's annoying. So we're not going to burn up all of our hydrazine. We're just going to, as I said, we're just going to burn as we coast to apoapsis. We only got 30 seconds left. I'd like to do my burn at about 20. So what we're going to do, we're going to pop into, going to get my touchpad working. You can do it. I believe in you. I believe. Surface, execute. So we're going to get leveled up on 0. We're going to disable roll. We're going to get ourselves level, and then we're going to spin. Spin faster. Spin faster. Even faster than how fast you're spinning now. We need some spin. And the reason we're doing this is because if the motors all burn exactly the same, we won't need to do this, and it'll just push us straight forwards. If they aren't burning with the same strength, it's going to fuck up, and we're going to go spinning wildly off into space. So this is to gyrostabilize us a little to help compensate for the fact that we're going to be firing 11 solid rocket motors, and we aren't necessarily all going to be burning at the same strength or for the same time. So 3, 2, 1, fire. All of the acceleration in the world! All of it! All of it! We're also going to disable you, even though there's nothing for it to control at this point. All of my RCS, all of my maneuvering capability was in that last one. And that's what 7 seconds looks like at 10 frames per second. And here comes our next stage of 3. The acceleration is just insane. As I said, we are approaching 30 Gs on this one. We've exceeded 30 Gs. We have almost exceeded 40 Gs on that one. And here goes the last one. We're probably going to exceed 40 Gs on this one. And the amount of acceleration, the amount of speed I've just picked up, we've exceeded 50 Gs. We almost hit 60 Gs. And now we're tumbling wildly out of control. I'm kidding, that was mostly the view deciding whether or not we're in orbit. We did it. We made it into orbit, although just fucking barely. Jesus Christ. Oh, we did not make it into orbit by a lot. Jesus Christ. Excuse me. So, we did it. Made orbit, and all of the pieces that I left behind, none of them made it into orbit, but we made it into orbit. So that basically is exactly what the Explorer 1 actually did. Our periapsis, our lowest point in the orbit, is only 138 kilometers. That is high enough that in Kerbal Space Program, they basically reach a point where you're in space and friction drops to zero. In reality, that doesn't happen. You continue to have little bits of atmosphere all the way up. And as a result, you're still going to have your orbit decay ever so slightly as you sit even in a relatively high orbit like this. So with a periapsis of that height, it's a very small frontal area, this probe, but it's also not going to stay pointed in the right direction. We expected, when we put the Explorer 1 up, we expected it to stay spinning exactly like this. Because we spun it to gyrostabilize it, there was nothing on it to stop it from spinning, so we expected it to stay spinning exactly like this for the entire time I was up there. Go with those antennas though. The thing is, it didn't work. When you actually put something in space, we expected it to stay spinning like this. We expected it to stay stable like this, spinning around its low inertia axis. And I mean, the basic laws of momentum said that's exactly what things would do, unless there were outside forces acting on it. Things are going to try and spin in their low momentum. I'm sorry, in their low rotational inertia axis. That's how it works on Earth. The thing is, that's not actually how it works in space. They actually prefer to spin around their long axis. They try to spin in a way to basically minimize their kinetic energy while keeping their momentum the same. And because kinetic energy is velocity squared times mass, that means the object will do everything it can to lower its velocity as low as possible. And spinning very quickly, it actually has a very high velocity, which means it has a lot of kinetic energy. And it's a really goofy situation, but basically over time this thing's going to slowly perturb more and more and more, to the point where it will eventually stabilize tumbling end over end along its long axis rather than its short axis, which really confused the shit out of us. When we first, again, the Explorer 1 was designed to rotate like this. It rotated like this for a while, and then it started tumbling, and then it stabilized as it was tumbling, and we had to completely rewrite basic Euclidean geometry to try and figure out why the hell our basic laws of momentum were completely wrong. But anyway, so we did it. Explorer 1's in orbit. We're going to fast forward a bit, just to wait for everything else to fall back into the atmosphere. And we did it. We're in orbit. It has no solar panels. It does have a very, very little electric draw rate, so we're going to have a few months of this little guy in orbit. But that's sort of it. There's not a lot else. There's not a lot else we can do with it. I've already put one up. This is my second thing I threw into orbit this time. That's why we didn't get any of the mission complete stuff. Oh, we don't. We're over the ocean, so no communication. So anyway, that's the Explorer 1. We threw the little guy into orbit. Again, I cannot overstate this. The difficult thing is not getting it up above the atmosphere. The difficult thing is getting up that nearly 8 kilometers per second of orbital velocity once you're up here. It takes around 1,300 meters per second of acceleration, or 1.3 kilometers per second of acceleration, with a good enough thrust to weight ratio to get something into a good suborbital trajectory. It takes around 10 kilometers per second, or a little bit less than 10 times as much acceleration, to get something into orbit. And because of how rockets work, because you have to keep their fuel fraction up, it's exponential. So if you want to double the amount of acceleration you have, you're going to need upwards of 4 times as much fuel. It's easy to say you're going to need 4 times as much fuel, but that's going to cut your power to weight ratio. It's going to quarter your power to weight ratio, which means you're not going to have enough acceleration to get off the launch pad, which means you need bigger, more powerful engines, or you need an extra stage at the bottom, which is going to add even more weight to the rocket, which means you're going to need even more fuel now to get your fuel fraction up. So yeah. So a tiny little rocket will put something into a suborbital trajectory pretty easily. The V2 on its own could put itself into an suborbital flight, a very good height. My highest point is 300 kilometers, but you know, it's not. That's not my point. Getting up isn't hard. It's staying up that's really, really hard. And this little thing was such a stupid idea. It uses solid rocket motors as an upper stage. That is the stupidest idea in the world. But at the time it made sense because they actually had a very high thrust to weight ratio, which meant they would accelerate very quickly, which means they didn't need a very long burn, which means they didn't need a very because this thing has no orientation keeping method. There's nothing it can do to control its orientation. Hence why I spun it to gyro stabilize it enough that it would hopefully stay pointed in the right direction long enough to do the burn. So you need to do a quick burn because you're probably not going to stay pointed in the right direction for long. I'm already not pointed in the right direction. But yeah, I've run out of things to say. So, Explorer 1, I did it again. Although we're going to pretend that this was the first time. I believe that's the launch tower that's followed me up. Or what is that? There's debris that's very close to me and I don't know what it is. What are you? I want to know what you are. You can do it, game. I believe in you. I believe. I believe. Yeah, it's the launch tower. There's a silly glitch where the launch tower tries to follow you up. I don't understand why it happens, but it happens. So I'll see you guys next time. I had fun. Actually, no, we're not. I don't know if that's probably gonna try and kill these. Alright, so I'll see you guys next time. Have fun with life. I'm having fun. It's good. So, I don't know what my next mission's gonna be, but I'm gonna get something together, something interesting. I might do something more with V2s, because I like them. They look funny, they're cheap, quick to build. Or I might just go on with the normal space program and start doing the Gemini missions and shit. And we're gonna do it. We're gonna do our Kerbal Space Program moon landing. I absolutely probably am not going to give up on this, but we'll see. So I'll see you guys next time. And I'm sorry that this ended up being ridiculously long, but I like talking to myself because I'm crazy.